Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Janice Keizer with REL Southwest. We're excited to have you join us today for our webinar, Teacher Preparation, Job Embedded Support, and Professional Educator Growth Systems for Schools Serving Indigenous Populations. Before we get started, we'll cover a couple of housekeeping items. We are recording today's webinar so that we can post the video on the REL Southwest website. So on your screen, you'll see a notice about the recording, and I'll read it out loud. The American Institutes for Research allows for the recording of audio, visuals, participants, and other information sent, verbalized, or utilized during business-related meetings. By joining a meeting, you automatically consent to such recordings. Any participant who prefers to participate via audio only should disable their video cameras so that only audio will be captured. Video and recordings of any AIR session shall not be transmitted to an external third party without permission of AIR. We are not, participants are not using audio or video today, only the chat box, please. Attendees are in listen-only mode, and the sound should be coming through your computer speakers. If you would like to listen by phone, you can find the dial-in information by clicking Audio Options on the bottom left-hand corner of your Zoom control panel. Please put all of your questions in the chat box. We do have automated captions available. If you do not see the captions, you can unhide them by clicking the up symbol next to CC Live. On the bottom, CC Live Transcript button, and then select Show Subtitles. In order for everyone to see your chat messages and participate in the discussion, please make sure the To area in your chat box is set to everyone and not just the hosts and the panelists. So to get us started, I'll introduce our presenters, and then we'll talk a little bit about the REL Southwest. And then Anya Dozier Enos and I will talk about Santa Fe Indian School Educator Growth System project and what the motivations were, what the process was, and we'll share some documents that were developed through that project. Then we'll transition into a discussion about a discussion with our guests about preparing educators to embrace the cultural characteristics, experiences, and perspectives of students through pre-service education, professional development, and performance evaluation. And then we'll close out the webinar with a question and answer session. As the webinar progresses, please put your questions for the presenters into the chat box, and we'll hold those until the end of the presentation, the panel presentation, and we'll address some of those questions. And lastly, at the end of the webinar, we'll share a stakeholder feedback survey, and we would like you to take a moment to complete that survey for us. We will also send you the link via email after the webinar is over. Our goals for this webinar are for you to learn about culturally responsive educator preparation related to teaching Indigenous students. We want you to understand the SFIS process for developing their educator growth system and hear from our experts on preparing and evaluating culturally responsive educators. Our experts today include Anya Dozier Enos, Education Development Director at the Santa Fe Indian School; Timothy Begaye, an Education Program Specialist focusing on language, culture, and history at the Bureau of Indian Education; Glenabah Martinez, Associate Professor of Educational Thought and Sociocultural Studies and Director of the Institute for American Indian Education at the University of New Mexico; and Mark Ericson, a longtime teacher at the Santa Fe Indian School. I'd like to share a little bit about the REL Southwest now. The Regional Educational Laboratory Southwest is part of a network of 10 regional educational laboratories funded by the U.S. Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences. REL Southwest works with stakeholders across our region to meaningfully improve student outcomes. We conduct this work in partnership with education stakeholders in the 5 states in our region: Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. REL Southwest conducts this work primarily through collaborative research partnerships with districts, state education agencies, policymakers, and others in our region. These partnerships focus on high leverage education issues that our partners or others in the field have identified as priorities. So at this time, I'd like to invite Anya to join me to talk about the development of the Santa Fe Indian School Educator Growth System.
Good afternoon. This section of today's webinar is about how we at Santa Fe Indian School developed our educator growth system to develop our unique approach to culturally responsive teaching and learning. In 2017, the state of New Mexico was using an evaluation system that teachers felt was punitive. Over the course of 2 years, SFIS teachers and key administrators explored what could be a better fit for SFIS. In 2019, we landed on a growth system as articulated in this slide. We also wanted a system that was reflective of national standards and research and could stand on equal footing with state and district systems. In the fall of 2019, REL Southwest and Santa Fe Indian School committed to working together. In a few minutes, we'll come back to the EGS vision and purpose, which was developed prior to our work with REL Southwest. For some context, here is a bit about Santa Fe Indian School. SFIS was established as an off-reservation boarding school in 1890 with the goal of assimilating Native students. However, since 1976, we have been a tribally controlled school funded by the Bureau of Indian Education. Sorry, didn't know you wanted to see me. So I'm just going to start that piece again. 1976, we've been a tribally controlled school funded by the Bureau of Indian Education and led by New Mexico 19 Pueblo governors through a 7-member board of trustees. This not just allows, but requires us to look through the lens of Native core values and foundations as we define our school and the education of our children. Thus, the Santa Fe Indian School is a sovereign educational community that builds upon its rich legacy to be the leader in Native American education. The SFIS mission is the ideal graduate statement, which was drafted in 1994. Again, I'm going to read this slide because it sets the foundation for students' education. SFIS graduates will understand the issues facing tribes in the Southwest and will be committed to maintaining Indigenous cultural values. They will participate in the culture of their communities and will have the skills to pursue the education and careers that will benefit them, their families, and their people. These skills will include creative problem solving using analysis of complex problems, the synthesis of collected data, and clear communication of solutions. Critical, confident, independent, and interdependent lifelong learning. Working productively with all types of people to make good choices. Considering our vision and mission, our system for success includes not only a culturally responsive curriculum, but also teacher and principal professional learning and development and use of Indigenous pedagogies. These 3 strands come together to inform the development of culturally responsive educators. So we use the analogy of a braid to describe the development of the educator growth system. For the EGS guidebook, we use the image of 3 different colors of corn braided together as a reminder that SFIS curriculum, professional learning and development, and Indigenous pedagogies are grounded in our vision and mission as we grow educators. The curriculum at Santa Fe Indian School is made up of 4 important components. The ideal graduate skills, the sun in this image, the core values, the soil, the foundational topics, the arrowheads, and state content standards, which aren't in the image, but are addressed in each class. I'll go through each component. Ideal graduate skills. When we adopted the Common Core state standards in 2011, we saw alignment with Common Core state standards to our ideal graduate statement. We articulated that alignment through the 10 ideal graduate skills and developed a rubric unique to Santa Fe Indian School and our ideal graduate mission to identify student progress toward achieving these skills and thus their journey to become ideal graduates. Core values. These Pueblo core values were identified as being important for all students and staff at Santa Fe Indian School. 10 were identified during a stakeholder strategic planning process in 2010, and 1 more was identified by a student through his capstone senior honors project. Foundational topics. For over 20 years, the SFIS Leadership Institute has been convening Pueblo Community Institutes to explore Pueblo education from a variety of lenses from a variety of Pueblo community leaders, members, and youth. Common themes arise that are important in Pueblo communities and thus important for SFIS students to understand. New Mexico state standards. As I mentioned earlier, all SFIS courses align to New Mexico state content standards. Here is the EGS vision and purpose statement again, this time in the context of professional learning and development. It centralizes student learning and well-being. It reflection, collaboration, and feedback, as well as SFIS core values and high professional standards are valued. These speak to a learning culture and continuous improvement. And those pieces are also called out explicitly in the last bullet. Notice the terminology of cultivating that calls to mind our agricultural imagery, which is also reflected in the braiding analogy of this presentation. The Educator Growth System design team was a diverse group of educators from all levels of involvement in our school. Dr. Mark Ericson, a panelist on this webinar, was one of the teachers on the design team. In addition to representation of teachers, administrators, special education, and the librarian, we also included 2 of our student living supervisors. As leaders of our residential dormitory program, their focus includes students' wellness, including tradition and culture. The next component of our educator growth system will be for student living staff. We'll be working on that starting in the fall of 2023. SFIS is in the process of defining our own unique pedagogy. We already pull from a variety of Indigenous approaches to teaching and know that our SFIS pedagogy is not just student-centered, but is community-centered. In February 2020, REL Southwest facilitated and led a facilitated and led an in-person 2-day work session with the SFIS design team. The effective teacher and principal statements were one result of that work. The statements were shared with all faculty for their feedback and now guide the teacher and principal evaluation. The effective teacher is charged with supporting students as they become ideal graduates, particularly in regard to students' use of the ideal graduate skills as needed in any given situation. The effective teacher and principal statements are included in the guidebook at the beginning of the teacher and principal sections. The effective principal upholds and safeguards the SFIS mission, the ideal graduate statement, particularly in terms of leading, teaching, and learning. Writing the EGS guidebook was an iterative process. At each stage of the project, we added new content to the guidebook and updated sections based on collaborative conversations on what we learned through the pilot study and so forth. Our in-person work with REL Southwest began January 2020 and continued with the two-day work session with the design team in February of that year. Then COVID hit and we had to pivot to virtual meetings, and so we focused on the principal component of the EGS with a smaller steering team that included SFIS principals, myself and another administrator, as well as Janice and 2 AIR consultants. As we became more confident with Zoom, we met with the full design team to draft the teacher rubric. You'll see on the project roadmap that we moved back and forth on creating the teacher and principal components, piloting and refining based on feedback. As a living document, the Educator Growth System will continue to be refined as needed. As each component of the system was completed, we incorporated it into the Educator Growth System guidebook, and SFIS staff will continue to update as needed. Additionally, we will expand this guidebook to include other departments at SFIS. As I said, next school year, we begin work on the student living staff components. I've just given in my overview the various sections of the EGS guidebook and its several sections. And now Janice will go through the details of how we developed rubrics to reflect our unique SFIS cultural responsive approaches while maintaining alignment to nationally recognized teacher and principal standards.
Thank you, Anya. We'll start with the performance evaluation rubric for teachers. This rubric is inspired by Charlotte Danielson's framework for teachers. We retained the essential elements of Danielson's framework, including the domains and indicators. However, the design team determined that the performance levels needed to better reflect Santa Fe Indian School's vision for teacher growth and development. Therefore, the performance levels are emerging, developing, accomplished, and exceeding. Similarly, the design team felt that the elements or evidence of teacher performance needed to reflect SFIS strong foundational beliefs that are articulated in the core values, the ideal graduate skills, and the vision and mission statements. Practices that are, so this is an image of one page of the performance evaluation rubric for teachers. We realize it might be a bit small on your screen. However, we'll make copies available to you so you're able to look at those. But we also paid close attention to making sure that the practices are culturally responsive, and that they promote awareness and understanding of the cultures, beliefs, and values of the school, students and their families, and the indigenous communities that support Santa Fe Indian School, which are, and these values and culturally responsive practices are embedded throughout all of the elements in both the teacher and the principal rubrics. So the teacher evaluation system, educator growth system, was piloted in the 2021-22 school year. It was piloted in the high school only at that particular time. We learned quite a lot from the pilot study. We learned things such as we needed to have a feedback form and a consistent process for sharing feedback between the evaluator and the educators. We also discovered that it would be helpful to identify a strong list of artifacts such as portfolios, instructional plans, surveys, those types of things that teachers could be evaluated on and could be included in the entire evaluation process when observation isn't necessarily the best way to gather information. We also are interested to learn more about student growth measures and value-added models that could be included in future versions of the EGS. And we also discovered that we should consider an approach to determining summative scores and ratings, which are not currently included in the EGS, but will be discussed and perhaps decided on at a future time. Like the performance evaluation rubric for teachers, the performance evaluation rubric for principals is also modeled after other examples of principal evaluation systems. Therefore, the performance evaluation rubric for principals is aligned to the Professional Standards for Educational Leaders, PSEL standards, and the New Mexico Administrator Competencies. The components include leadership practices, indicators, performance levels, and elements. The performance levels are the same as those in the teacher rubric. Likewise, the elements reflect Santa Fe Indian School's strong foundational beliefs that are articulated in the core values, the ideal graduate skills, and the vision and mission statements. Practices that are culturally responsive and promote awareness and understanding of the culture's beliefs and values of the school, students and their families, and the indigenous communities that support Santa Fe Indian School are embedded throughout the elements. The pilot study for the Principal Educator Growth System is occurring right now in this school year. Currently, the components that are being piloted are the Principal Professional Growth Plan, observations or walkthroughs using the EGS rubric. They are talking about and exploring ways to use artifacts to demonstrate principals' professional growth and development, as well as documenting their activities throughout the year. We are also piloting a feedback process, both formal and informal, and talking about rubric scoring, summative and formative types of scoring processes.
As culturally responsive educators with a commitment to continued growth, the development of the Educator Growth System Guidebook has helped us at SFIS to be clearer about our unique curriculum, professional learning and development, and pedagogy. It's been a great project.
Right. Now